All right, so we are started. So we started recording for the live broadcast for the Bernie and People's Candidates Networks Coalition that we're building. We have our minutes and agenda. So far, we don't have anyone else on the call, but that should change shortly. So generally our goal here is to talk about the candidate groups, our candidate supports for individual campaigns. Technically it includes Bernie. Candidate databases and communications, People's National Committee, which is going to be competing directly with the Democratic National Committee, which is corrupt and 1% controlled currently. The Parallel Congress for, so that would be the People's Parallel Congress. Third party run for Sanders. I think there's one other thing. Discussion. Let's see if there's any other RSVPs. So that would be RSVPs. No other RSVPs. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, this is Winston Apple.
Hey, Winston. Great.
And I'm in the car with Sean Wachter, one of my volunteers.
And he's on the call as well?
Yes, we're going to be driving and doing hands-free.
Great. I need to work out some echoing here going on.
I see that.
I had it perfect yesterday.
Get our points across.
I had it perfect yesterday. I'm sure I can fix this. Let's see here. Sorry, unmuted. Turn it down a little bit. Oh, I know what it is. It's got to be not this. It's got to be YouTube. Oh, no, something here.
Driving down.
So my hope is that we'll have about 5 people on the call. So if you include the 2 of you, there's 3 of us so far. So hopefully have another 3 people. It's gonna be our first call. So, and it was just me doing outreach. All right, but we'll start checking in here soon, no matter what, because there's plenty to go through. Where are you guys located again?
What's that?
Where are you guys located again?
I'm out of Independence, Missouri. I'm running for lieutenant governor in Missouri, and we're on our way to Columbia, Missouri, to the University of Missouri for a presentation tonight.
Nice. And when is the Missouri primary?
It was March 15th.
Oh, so it already happened.
Yes.
Nice.
And it was essentially a tie on the Democratic side.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So as long as we have a pretty small group, we should be able to do group facilitation. And if needed, I can jump in as the facilitator. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. And I believe I have your guys' contact information. I can see if you're on the, I'll invite you to the list to double check. I do have your emails. I don't know if I have Sean's email, but he can just sign up on the RSVP at some point and we can make sure we get him on there as well. All right, so this is the Thursday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Should we try to keep it to an hour? How long are you guys driving for?
probably less than an hour, but we can park and listen if we get there.
Okay, just good to note. So let's start with just basic check-ins. This would include your name, their location, which you kind of already went through, and then any information on collaborating with Bernie or other candidates, or what you've been up to over the last few weeks. And then after that, we're do group check-ins if we have other groups on the line. So do you want to start, Winston? Or?
Sure. Winston Apple. I live in Independence, Missouri. I'm a candidate for lieutenant governor. I've actually been involved with a group that I started a little over a year ago in January of 2015 called Populists in Action, like the Populist Party. The political action committee that was designed to help get people elected who would represent people instead of Wall Street, the big banks and corporations. Came out of my involvement with the Sierra Club on the climate crisis and with Move to Amend on the Citizens United situation. And so I've been interested in the idea of a political revolution or a transformative election, whatever you want to call it, something that'll get our government back taking care of everybody instead of just the fat cats again. And so along came Bernie, and all of a sudden this looks a lot more likely. And so in April of last year, I'm also a singer-songwriter, and I was performing at a march against Monsanto when Tessa Sheehan came up to me and introduced herself as the main Bernie volunteer in Kansas City, and suggested we should work together, and we've been doing so ever since. So I've been pretty involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign out of Kansas City as a volunteer since last April. And in the last month or so, I've become aware of several other candidates here in Missouri that are identifying themselves as Bernie Sanders type Democrats. There's a lady named Cori Bush, Coribush, a African-American female nurse and minister from the Ferguson area who's running for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. And there's a African-American minister from the Kansas City area, Eric Dickerson, I think. Hope I'm remembering that right. Who's running for the Democratic nomination for governor. Those are the only two that I'm really aware of that have gone out of their way to identify themselves as Bernie supporters.
Nice.
So, my name is Sean Walker. I do nuclear reactor core design. I do core optimization, liquid salt reactors, molten salt reactors. They're an advanced concept. And I met with them a couple of years ago at a talk. A guy who wrote a book called Dollarocracy, I believe it was called, spoke at a public library, and that's where I met with. And kind of a lifelong Democratic activist and party activist, and so I've been involved in involved people in the campaign, and I have an interest in building a sustainable future, and but I'm not a big fan of the status quo with nuclear, and certainly not with coal. And Sean was a volunteer when I ran for the Missouri House 2 years ago, and is helping with my campaign this year, but also helping with Populists in Action. And we do not have a piano. We do not have a piano in the car. That means I'm getting a message.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, yeah. Good to know.
So, I'll check in here as well.
Check in here as well.
It looks like we still don't have any other
have any
people
other
on the
people
call,
on
so it could be a small call,
it could be a small
which is
call,
fine.
which is fine.
But I'll give some updates
But
about
I'll give some
yesterday's
updates
call,
about
which went
yesterday's
really
call,
well.
which went really well.
So my name's Jay.
So my name's Jay.
I'm running for the 24th Assembly House seat in California. And, we're working on a coalition of local candidates here, both progressive and Bernie candidates. We have someone running against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco, as well as, other progressive candidates running for Congress here. I chose to run for the state office primarily because it was a non-incumbent seat. It was an open seat, so I do feel like I have a good chance of winning. I'm the only Bernie candidate, and there are a lot of establishment Democrats in my particular race. It's still a lot of work and an uphill battle, and in a pretty small area like our Bernie movement here, which is my primary focus, is supporting and helping the Bernie movement, is about maybe 5 to 10 core organizers, and maybe 50, 100 volunteers who come in and out here and there. So it's a pretty small group compared to San Francisco or Santa Cruz or LA or some of the other places like San Jose, compared to where our area is. But it's still going strong, and we keep we're doing at least 4 or 5 different phone banking per week, which is awesome. In the context of some of the work that I've been doing is helping build these coalitions for the Bernie candidates, as well as connecting other groups, which I was hoping to get some more of them on here, but I'm very excited about learning more of the of your group, for the Populists in Action, and I can talk some about the Bernie candidates work that I've done, as well as networking with the BernieCrats and Sanders Democrats, and then there's also the People's National Committee, which I'm working on starting to directly compete with the People's, with the Democratic National Committee, which is pretty much corrupt and 1% focus and corporate focus. So that's definitely my interest. I think this is a great opportunity, no matter what happens in this election, to set up a framework for long-term organizing and collaboration. So that is very exciting. So I think that's it. Did you have any direct question for me, or should we jump into the groups?
We can jump into the group.
Cool. So, basically what I think would be good is to, give me a little bit more background on your organization, and, what types of resources and what basically where it's at as far as its region, its focus, and that kind of such, and so we can connect it into the larger network.
The mission of Populists in Action has been simply to replace corporatists with populists in all 3 branches of government at all levels of government, but particularly the legislative and the executive branches. And what we've hit upon quite recently, and it seems to be helping us finally achieve liftoff, is what I'm calling a populist platform, which is basically Bernie's platform, with the addition of the amendment that corporations are not people and money is not speech, which he's talked about, but I don't think he really features it prominently. And the idea, let me just share this thought with you. I started Populists in Action, and I'm continuing to push it because I don't have a lot of faith in the Democratic Party to stand up and stand strong and do the right thing. But I'm keeping I'm doing the best I can to get them to do that, to work within the party. I'm running for a committeeman seat. I've got some Bernie supporters in Springfield, Missouri, and there'll be a group of them here in Columbia tonight. who have expressed an interest in putting me forward to replace a traditional Democrat in one of the 4 Democratic National Committee seats that Missouri has. I'm also planning to attend the mass meeting on April 7th to be a delegate to Philadelphia for Bernie. And my interest there is in having as much influence as possible, which may not be any, but if it's at all possible, to get the Democrats to put together a strong platform and then actually back it up with some legislation instead of just glittering generalities. That's my interest in going to Philadelphia. I don't have a tremendous interest in wearing funny hats or just attending a giant party. If I was going to Philadelphia for fun, I'd just take my wife on vacation. But I do believe that ultimately we've got to defeat Republicans. The Republicans have made climate crisis and jobs to pay a living wage, single-payer health care, all the issues we care about should not be partisan issues, but the Republicans have made them partisan issues. And I believe ultimately the only way to defeat the Republicans is through the Democratic Party. And until quite recently, in fact, until Monday night of this week, I was using takeover language, and someone had shared with me Tom Hartman's video about how the Tea Party took over the Republican Party. And for months, I've been encouraging Bernie supporters to run for office, to run for positions as committee man and committee woman, join the Democratic Party, take over the party. Monday night, I was in Mountain Grove, Missouri, way down by the Arkansas border, and a room full of very elderly, longtime Democratic activists were so impressed with the young people that had shown up, most of them for Bernie, in Missouri on March 15th at the polls. And they wanted to know, how do we get them into the party? Would one of the elderly chair of that county committee wanted to know if I could help find a young person who would want to take his job because he's done it a long time and he thinks it's time for some fresh ideas and some young blood. And so I'm not talking takeover anymore. I'm saying that if we get past the acrimony that's beginning to surface between Hillary and Bernie and some of their supporters, and we focus on the fact that even Hillary's supporters agree with Bernie on most every issue, there's really no disagreement on the issues. And I think we need to focus on that. You know, Bernie himself said early on it was not about him or Hillary or anybody else. It's about a grassroots movement to take our government back from corporate interests. And I believe that 100%. I believe that Bernie still has an excellent chance of being the nominee, and I intend to work hard to do everything I can to see that he is the nominee. But it's far more important that we take back both houses of Congress. And I believe it's possible if we stand up for what we believe in and stand strong. Primarily, to me, that means rejecting Lyndon Johnson's approach to the war on poverty, which was welfare programs that I think have cost the Democrats a lot of votes over the years. People who see us as the party that wants to take money out of their paycheck and give it to people to sit home and do nothing. And I think very much like Bernie is a Roosevelt New Deal Democrat, I am too. And I think if we revert to Franklin Roosevelt's approach, which was to put people to work on socially useful jobs and pay them a living wage to do it, Roosevelt's economic Bill of Rights is the essence of the populist platform that's up on our website, and it's the essence of what I've been talking about as a candidate for lieutenant governor. And I think that appeals to independents and Republicans as well. There was a poll done by GBA Strategies in January of 2015 that indicated 90% support among Democrats, 60 to 65 among independents, and over 50% among Republican voters for everything Bernie's talking about.
Excellent. Thank you.
So that's where I'm at.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. That is a great thing. Someone just got on the call. We're gonna let you check in. And but just to refresh on what you just said, Winston, I got 4 main things. One was the Populist in Action organization that you're working on. The other one was basically how do you internally, make changes within the democratic system. One name for that people use is Occupy Democrats. Then the third thing you talked about is just the Democratic Party in general being the primary organization that can actually beat Republicans. And then the last part is you alluded to the whole burning movement. So it's really great. And we'll get right back to you. But let's let this other person check in who just got on.
Hi there. This is Kara Strano-Taylor. I'm running for Congress in the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional.
Excellent. Say your name.
I apologize that I'm late.
Oh, no worries. And what was your name one more time?
It's Kara, K-E-R-I-T-H. My middle is Strano, S-T-R-A-N-O, and my last is Taylor, T-A-Y-L-O-R.
Great.
And yes, for the yard sign.
Yeah, so we have 4 of us on the call right now. This is our first call. You can imagine how busy candidates are right now. But we're still doing really good. We started with individual check-ins, so we're going to let you give us a little bit more information. And then right now we're getting into what we're calling like group or organizational check-ins, because there's a lot of different organizations and visions and or goals that are being put forward. So we're just trying to document them to get things started, and then we can talk about general updates and topics for our agenda. So if you wanted to go a little bit more about your name, your location, why you are doing what you're doing, what you've been up to for the last few weeks, would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
The congressional seat that I'm running for covers 24% of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It contains all or part of 16 counties. It is generally white, rural, and poor. The heroin epidemic has hit us particularly hard. And I'm a family law attorney, and I'm watching the devastation that poverty and you throw in a little bit of opioid abuse wreaks on families. So I ran against the incumbent in 2014, and we were able to move ourselves 10 points from what term on a tenth of their money, and we decided to run again in 16. We had the opportunity to face the incumbent 9 times in the election campaign, which he regretted desperately. But this cycle is very different. It's helpfully different when I'm talking to people. In some ways invigorating, and in some ways absolutely horrifically frightening. I'm coming across more Democrats than I want to count that are supporting Trump. And for the first time it occurred to me that was happening, I had to kind of bite my tongue, but I've developed a very effective way to talk to them, because they view themselves as anti-establishment voters, and they're voting anti-incumbent. When I talk to them about Bernie, I lose them. So, because the socialism idea has been beat down into their heads. I've been a Bernie supporter for a very long time. I'm actually going down and speaking at a rally they're holding in the Capitol in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on Saturday, along with John Fetterman, who's running for Senate in Pennsylvania. So, doing the work, right? I dream of having access to Bernie's fundraising machine, but until that happens, we're doing the work. So I'm just thankful to know that there's so many other BernieCrats out there that are also doing the work. So that's it.
Great.
Is the incumbent a Democrat or a Republican?
Republican. They toe the party line, can't articulate why he votes the way that he votes. Republican. For example, his objection to raising the minimum wage is, and I quote, "No one should strive for the minimum." Like, this is the guy, and I mean, he defends his votes against the Affordable Care Act by saying mammograms were always free. So this is the guy that we have, and we deserve a hell of a lot better. And we're able, people are receptive to it. But You know, he ran on $1 million last year, and we spent 90,000 in the general. So, and it's a lot of land to cover. So that's where we are. Yes, incredibly. It's probably one of the most rural parts of the state, and we cover. I mean, Elk County is in our district, which probably has more elk than people. Yeah. So, I mean, strangely enough, I'm a target shooter. I ride a motorcycle. So while I'm a Democrat, I'm not a scary Democrat to a lot of the people that are out here, and it actually has it carries a lot of weight to it. And I was born and raised here, so you know, I'm not an interloper that came and moved into the district and is going to run, you know, without being aware of what's going on the ground. So, but yeah.
How do you think Bernie's platform plays with your constituents as opposed to Bernie himself?
That's an interesting question. I think people like Bernie, but his platform frightens them. And let me tell you why. They have been indoctrinated to believe that socialism is the end of all things. And even though I was just sitting at a school board meeting the other night and someone, you know, was railing against socialism, and I pointed out to them, you realize that what we're doing is socialism, right? We're taking the money and resources of an entire community, many of whom do not have children, and we're bundling it together to spend for the best outcomes for our kids and our community, right? That's the nature of how this works. You know, our military and Social Security and all these things. And
Medicare,
the guy who is
Medicaid.
a Tea Party Republican looked at me, he's like, I never thought of it that way. Okay. So, you know, person by person, but they've really been convinced that if you want to spread the wealth around, what happens when I win the lottery and I'm rich? You're going to take all my money. I'm not kidding. These are people that barely have a car that'll make it 20 miles to the next town, dreaming of the day they will be wealthy, and if the socialist is elected, you're going to take half of it. Bizarre, but it's true.
Great.
Well, it's not completely inaccurate. If you win the lottery, they do take close to half the money.
Yes, but the damn socialists are the ones that are doing it. Like it's not rational and it's not reasoned. But I mean, I don't know where the other folks on the call are from, but the only demographic in the Western world whose life expectancy is declining makes up half of my district. These are rural people with a high school education or less. And
I'm from a rural part of Kansas, and I understand the type of people you're talking about. I mean, there's what I think of as the white angry male, the prototypical dumb Republican voter. They vote not for Republicans but against Democrats. They don't quite know why.
Right.
They're hard to reach.
Do you find, I can tell you that, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we had really strong Democratic strongholds here. Union, Catholic, Democrats. And people tell me, oh, my dad was a Democrat, but your party left me. And when I push them and ask them what they mean, they say, they've been chasing after the minority voter for so long that they forgot about us. It's a really interesting point. And we talk a lot about it. I think we could have a whole nother conversation about whether it's true or not, but those people are now voting Republican. They feel more supported by the rhetoric that they hear on, at a local county Republican meeting than they do. I got to tell you, if people talk immigration here, it makes people crazy. Because they hear it as, so you're telling me you want more people to come in and lower the wages that I'm struggling to make. Like, they look at it not as a national position or what's right or what's wrong. They look at it as, so more people are going to competing for fewer jobs? Really? And the Democrats have never done a really good job to talk about that with the white blue-collar worker in rural America.
This is Winston Apple. I'm running just for lieutenant governor in Missouri, but I have an organization, Populist in Action, that is trying to get candidates for Congress to sign on to a platform that the heart and soul of it is to take Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights.
Yeah, FDR. I love it.
His second Bill of Rights, which he introduced, of course, in 1944 in his State of the Union address, that every worker has a right to a job that pays a living wage, which he defined as not only including food and shelter, but also medical care as a right, education as a right, Social Security, and recreation. And what I'm proposing on the populistinaction.org website, and I'm hoping the Democratic Party will embrace this and take it over as their own. If they don't, we'll do it without them. But the idea of adding a little dose of Benjamin Franklin, who once said that well done is better than well said. And well done in this case means legislation to make the federal government the employer of last resort. If you cannot find a job that pays a living wage as defined by Franklin Roosevelt, we will put you to work. You would go to the employment office, not the unemployment office for a check, but the employment office for a job and a paycheck. And that paycheck will ensure that you and your dependents have food, shelter, medical care, educational opportunities, Social Security, and recreation. And I think if the Democrats reject Lyndon Johnson's approach to poverty, which was food stamps, subsidized housing, take money out of workers' paychecks and give it to people to sit home, and Ronald Reagan did a pretty good job of misleading a lot of white voters into believing in black welfare queens as the main recipient. We know the numbers don't support that, but that's the perception.
Well,
and I am of the opinion that if the Democrats embrace this, we could win big in November.
That's you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we have equal numbers of welfare recipients, and we are a 94% Caucasian district.
Right.
You don't want to own that here, right? You still hear that same mantra, even though it doesn't bear out to be true. That's a really interesting point. I just pulled it up on Google. I'm going to have to do some research on that. Maybe that'll end up on our website. Start sharing it with people.
Okay. I will add this little thought. In 1994, a Republican Speaker of the House by the name of Newt Gingrich came up with a contract with America that many Democrats refer to as the contract on America. But it was a brilliant strategy. It was employed for Republican purposes. We've got a much better agenda, but the strategy was brilliant. 433 of the 435 Republicans running for the House signed on, said, if you vote for us, we will do this. It was 10 very specific pieces of legislation. They picked up 52 seats that year. He nationalized the election for the House of Representatives. Now, he didn't mention to the voters that the Senate was still controlled by the Democrats and Bill Clinton was in the White House. And so very little of that got through. I think the only thing that really got through was a compromise on ending welfare as we know it. But if we were to run that same strategy of getting people like you who are running for Congress to sign on to this, and enough Democrats sign on, then the monetary disadvantages are minimized, name recognition is minimized. It's a national campaign to say, if you put the Democrats back in charge of the House, we'll make this government the employer of last resort. And in 94, Gingrich picked up 52 seats with that strategy and took back the House for the Republicans for the first time in 40 years. This year, we need 30 seats to take it back. And I believe that anything Newt can do, we can do better.
How many BernieCrats do we have that are running for Congress? Anybody know offhand?
Yeah. So currently there are about 200 Bernie candidates. That is a rough estimate. Of those, 100 of them, about half of them are incumbents. So of the 500 people in Congress, there are 100 of them who are generally supportive of the Bernie platform. That doesn't necessarily mean they've been directly endorsed Bernie, but that they generally support him. And then there's about 100 other candidates. So this is less than half of the total House of Representatives, even beyond that, because we're talking about candidates at the state legislature and local as well. So it's not a lot of candidates. We need thousands of Bernie candidates running in every single city council, every single legislator seat, every single congressional seat, and we need to go big in 2018 and 2020.
And let me just add that I believe that a lot of, I'll mention my own congressman as an example. Emmanuel Cleaver is a superdelegate who's announced for Hillary Clinton. I believe that he would endorse this. I think that when you look at the issues and you look at the platform, this is an idea that most Democrats would embrace, a majority of independents and a majority of Republican voters. I think that we could win big with this strategy.
So if you're looking at the contract with America, right? Is what Gingrich
Right.
called it. I'm trying to remember. It was very clear and very simple. Is that something that we could draft down to be something clear and something simple?
Are you on the Populist in Action website or Googling Contract with America?
I can't be here.
If you look on populistinaction.org, POPULISTS,
I'm there.
inaction.org, look at our platform.
So
And that's what I'm talking about. We would ask every candidate for office for Congress to sign on to each plank there. Yes, I'm with this. No, I'm not. Plank by plank. And then we turn that over to the voters as information for them to use in determining who to support.
So
And
this is
Populist in Action is right now recruiting voters and volunteers to work for candidates who sign on to that platform.
so this is Jay. I think that we're getting very, very deep into the discussion of this particular platform and signing people on campaign, and I think it's very important, and we need to talk more about it. But there are also, like, I'm pretty sure we all need to get going here pretty soon. But generally speaking, there are a lot of other updates, and also, housekeeping procedures. For example, regardless of whether we're talking about this particular platform and getting candidates to sign on to this platform, or getting candidates to sign on any other platform that we want, we just do not have the basic communication systems for the people's candidates. And this is a huge, huge problem. So I'm actually working on 3 separate databases right now, and I'm the only person I know working on these databases. And I found one other candidate. I've actually been in touch with a couple dozen candidates, but there's one other candidate who says they might have a volunteer who could help with some of these databases. But basically, of the 200 Bernie Democrats that I just mentioned, I only have emails for 30 of them. So I literally have spent hours and hours and hours going to every single website for every single Bernie candidate, manually getting each and every one of their contact information and emails. So you have these big lists of all these Bernie candidates, and even the Reddit one, there's probably an additional 100, if not a double 200 candidates who have not been verified. And so we just can't communicate with anybody. So finding the volunteers and getting the people together to, like, the first step is simply building the communications so that we're even.
I can help with that.
Yeah. So that's definitely a big step.
I could have one of my interns spend some time running down contact information.
Yeah.
If that would be helpful.
Oh yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it would be very, very helpful. I have a link. I sent out the notes. There's a link to the main doc. There is a link to our list. There's a couple lists, but it has basic instructions on how to build the databases. But basically, you know, it's all editable online. Bernie candidates, you can go to Facebook, or you can go to BernieCandidates.network.srl. It's all linked off of the main doc. And you can always call me and we can help with that. So I think that's definitely a first step. So if we have everyone's contact information, everybody's emails across the entire country, getting more people on this particular call, as well as just getting people engaged in, you know, creating the new platforms that we're going to need to get the voters engaged in the people's movement and the people's movement to take back our government. It's going to be a lot easier.
I'm looking at the list that was attached to the email, and there's 21 people on that list that all the contact information is filled in. These are the Super Bernie candidates.
Yeah, the Super Bernie candidates is simply a subcategory, which is what I define as candidates who you actually go to their front page and it says Bernie candidates on it. It like says literally that they're a Bernie supporter, because the vast majority of candidates, they've been, you know, endorsed Bernie on some random Facebook post, but you go to their website and you can't find, you know, any information about Bernie, which for me is kind of weird. I'm encouraging all Bernie candidates to actually say they're a Bernie supporter on the front page of their website, and that's the definition of Super Bernie candidates. And of course, there's a lot of other candidate groups that we could go through here, but if you look at the top or the bottom, I think it's probably to be the bottom, there are tabs, and you can click on Bernie candidates, and it should have you know, another tab that you would be able to see the rest of the candidates. Yeah. Cool. So I mean, you know, don't want to completely get us sidetracked here, but you know, my main goals here is to, one, get a general overview of everything going on. You know, obviously, Politics in Action is one of literally dozens of organizations that are working on a very similar thing. The fact that you're focusing on specifically the FDR's Bill of Rights is unique. And so it's a very important component that we want to pull into this bigger coalition that we're building. But it is good to mention some of the other organizations. So if you knew other organizations you wanted to mention, Kirith, and then I can mention the ones that I did. And then also, Winston, if you knew any other organizations that we should be researching. And then I...
Well, there's the Progressive Democrats of America.
The what?
Progressive Democrats of America.
And that would be like a sub-party within the Democrats? So progressive...
No, that's a separate organization that had a big We Want Bernie campaign early on. They kind of, at least on their website, they take credit for him running. There's a guy named Mike, I think, Mike something. It's a national organization. They supposedly provide volunteers and funding for congressional candidates. They are focused exclusively on congressional races. They are very, very big Bernie supporters. So, like, you know, Ms. Taylor running in Pennsylvania would be someone they might be willing to help. Now, I've not been able to discern whether they actually do that. You know, a lot of these organizations, most of the money they raise goes to pay someone to put out emails to raise money to pay their salaries.
Yeah.
And, you know, both right wing and left wing, sometimes it never goes beyond that. All the money they raise pays the salaries of the people to crank out the emails to keep the money coming in to pay their salaries. And you can sign an online petition to stop the TPP by midnight tonight, and 3 nights later it may need to be stopped again, and you send $3 more. So, you know, this is why I say with Populists in Action, if the Democratic Party were to step up and make this their own, Populists in Action would be largely irrelevant. The only use, the other value I see with that approach is it makes it easier for independents and Republicans to vote for Democrats. Kind of a middle road where you're not officially joining the Democratic Party, but you're supporting some good Democratic candidates who have signed on to this platform.
Was that the Democrat? Was that the Progressive Democrats for America or a different group?
The Progressive Democrats, I think, by their very name, have eliminated themselves from that role. That's why I chose the populist instead of progressive or liberal or anything else.
Yeah.
Progressive and liberal, people will throw up their guard immediately when they hear those words. Most people with populist go, "What the hell is that?" So, at least you've got them in an open mind frame where you can say that means we support candidates who favor people rather than corporations.
Great. Yeah,
I'll second that. Progressive scares people here.
Yeah, I usually use the term people's candidates, or I like the populist approach too. Populist is really good.
Right.
So I did note down the concept of money in the system, and how most campaigning for all political action committees and candidates is very fear-based. It's like, oh my God, all these terrible things are going to happen unless you give money right now. And it's all going to just pay people's salaries. I mean, that is very interesting. So I noted that down as a next step. I also noted down the access to the Bernie fundraising machine as a next step, because that has come up with multiple candidates being frustrated that Bernie is not talking about any of the other candidates that are running on his platform. So I have a bunch of... Yeah.
The Washington Post reached out to me a couple weeks ago. I actually got a line, you've seen an article, and the guy was just pushing the hell out of me to try to criticize Bernie for not helping congressional. And my response to him was, he has his own race to run. I have my own race to run. I'm confident there will come a time when he's going to release his people to go find their congressional candidates. It's just not now. Of course, Hillary is out touting that she's raising all this money for the D-trip that's going to, sweep in all these like-minded members of Congress, which I think is fair to say is complete and utter bull, because the D-trip doesn't fund people that aren't part of the party network, right? We know this. So, I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not disappointed that it hasn't, because I don't have an expectation that it should. I have a hope that it will, because I think it could be very powerful. But I don't know how we make that happen either.
And I'd like to say up front that I will forever be grateful to Bernie Sanders for entering this race.
Right.
I've been pushing for the idea of a political revolution to get government back on the side of the people for at least 5 or 6 years now. And I was starting to feel a lot like one of the troops at Valley Forge, but with no George Washington in sight.
Right.
And then Bernie came riding in on his big white horse, and we've got something going.
Right.
But I will say that all of his early statements to the effect that this was not about Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or anyone else, it's about a grassroots movement to take our government back. I have been working with and through and for his campaign in Kansas City, Missouri since last April. And increasingly, I see that if you look at the actions of the campaign, it doesn't look like that. It looks like the only item on the agenda is to get Bernie the nomination and to win the White House. And I've come into I've had the same sort of comments directed to me, that what is Bernie doing for the down ballot people? And my response was very much the same as yours, that I think he's pretty busy right now.
Yeah. So
Now,
I don't want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we don't want to just jump into that. I mean, it's a very broad discussion, and we do have a space for that as well, which is the Wednesday night calls are the broad, Bernie movement calls, and there is a lot of discussion about that, because it's not just the Bernie candidates; it's the actual grassroots movement and the bottom up, people's movement for taking back our government. So, I think it's good, to put things on next steps so we can have them for future agenda items, but we do have a lot to cover today, plus we need to wrap up pretty soon.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So the main goal of putting things on next steps is that we just have them noted so that we can cover them in future meetings and make sure that we know that they are issues. But I 100% agree with everything you guys just said, and that no matter what,
we
we have already won.
have already won.
Right? The movement itself, and like you're saying, even people who are voting for Hillary, they agree with the movement. They agree with the message of the movement for the people's, democracy. The entire platform that Bernie stands for it's a done deal that we won. So at this point, it's a time of building the framework, building the infrastructure to support this for the long term. We already won. It's done. We just have to build the systems to actually take control of the government, and it could take years to do that. So it's doing the work. It's building the communication systems. It's making sure we're listening to people, giving people a voice, empowering individuals, and also helping people in their times of need. As we all know, that we have lots of people who are falling through the cracks. So I want to turn it over to Kirith real quick to see if there are any other specific organizations that we need to be researching and getting into these phone calls and collaborating with them. And then I will mention all the organizations that I know, because I know about 5. And then I think that would basically be the main things we need to get done today. And then we can just, wrap up and, do next steps and stuff like that.
Keystone Progress is a statewide group that's pretty active. They get about, 500 people to a summit every February. I can reach out to them and see if they have any reps that would like to join in on this.
And can you explain a little of what they do? This is a group that's specifically in Philadelphia?
No, Keystone Progress is statewide. It's actually housed in Harrisburg, and it's a group of progressives. Most of them are Democrats, a lot of independents. They host primary debates for statewide candidates every February. They endorse candidates in statewide elections. They have a pretty robust email network, keeping people informed of what they're doing. So it's a motley crew of activists that are not satisfied with the actions of the Democratic Party, so they join this group. So.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds like a really good model. If you knew a website, but I thought obviously we can just Google Keystone Progress. Any other groups you want to mention? And that would be for Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania, yeah. I don't have any others.
Okay, cool. So I'll just go a few of the projects that we are working on. The first thing that I already mentioned was the Bernie movement calls. And I'll just give a quick update. Yesterday we had our first call, and we had about 10 people on the call, 5 to 10 people. So it was a little bigger than this one. And people seem very interested in wanting to, have an open participatory space to look at the broader movement than just the individual presidential campaign. We also have our local organization for grassroots politics here, and there's just a big interest of people, building these groups that'll outlast this particular election and help, get all different types of candidates elected as well. So that's happening at the local level here in the San Francisco Bay Area, in California, as well as we're starting to get that on the national level. The main groups that exist right now on the national level are, because it would be good just to cover them. The Bernie Thinkers, so this is electing the Bernie Thinkers. They do the most rigorous validation. And then, of course, there's the Sanders Democrats, which is good. And I do have an email for the Sanders Democrats. Next, we have the X-Facts for Sanders. They did some of the original lists that then the Sanders Democrats took over. There's a group called Grassroots Select that is more on the grassroots side. They also have a Reddit. The Project Progressive is also a new organization that's trying to get progressive candidates elected. And then just recently, Project Progressive. Yeah, and I have links to all their Facebooks and Twitters and everything here. Just recently, over the last week and a half to 2 weeks, we've been getting BernieCrats. Have you guys heard that term? Yeah, so just recently, there's a flood of new groups. There's at least 4 or 5 different Twitter accounts, as well as other groups that are utilizing the term BernieCrats. So that's a new thing. There's also the Party of Bernie. So yeah, those are most of the things that are going on, and I tried to invite all of them to this call, and I'll continue to do that. Obviously, if these people are busy, we're also looking at other potential times that we could have these. I had these meetings. I had a few people say that they may be interested in Saturdays. Saturday, you know, any time. So that's another possibility if these times don't work. But we can also talk on Wednesday nights on this particular topic, but there's also a million other things going on in the movement. So the only other things I want to add is for the groups that I'm working on personally. So the main focus and goal of this particular group is there's literally dozens and dozens of groups, including all the ones we mentioned here, plus dozens more that we don't even know about, who are all working on the same goals, but not working together. So the idea is that this particular space is, we're trying to build a network of networks, right? So there's many different networks of candidates, of different types of candidates that are all in alignment with the broader people's vision. And so we're trying to build this network of networks and get everyone communicating and connecting together. And then from that, anything can evolve. From there, the main groups I've been working on is the super Bernie candidates, which are the people, the Bernie candidates that actually have Bernie on their main page. And then the general Bernie candidates list, which is the only publicly editable list on a Google Doc, right? But there's also the Reddit list. The Reddit lists are also publicly editable, I believe. But I'm not 100% sure how the Reddit community functions just yet, but I'm still working on trying to get contacts there. And then lastly is the the People's National Committee. In the People's National Committee, we would be setting up to directly compete against the Democratic National Committee as a you know, group that we're building to support all the people's candidates. And then I'm also working on two other projects that are semi-related. One is the idea of the People's Parallel Congress. I'm actually building entire new parallel systems of government where the winner of the election is the person who gets the most number of votes with the least amount of money. So the idea is we can have an entire parallel Congress and even parallel state legislatures of elected representatives who won the vote with the least amount of money. So you're basically getting out all the big money and corporate and interests out of the picture, and you're actually building communication and decision-making systems in a way that is based on people representation. And then the last one is I'm also doing a conference calls system as well as in-person events, which I'm calling political shows, where we're doing like it's 3 hours long. The first hour is local candidates, the second hour is state candidates, the third hour is federal candidates, and then we're intermixing information about the ballot measures and other political activities going on in the communities, and then we're also you know, interlacing it with music and comedy and, you know, entertainment to make it exciting for young people and getting more people involved. So that's going to be both conference calls as well as in-person events. And my goal is to do 3 or 4 of those before the June 7th election for my election. I think I told you I'm running for 24th Assembly here in California. So I think that's pretty much all I need to do for my updates to get them in the record, and because it's all being recorded, people can watch it online, and I think we're good. Cabrera, C-A-B-R-E-R-A, J. Blas Jacob Cabrera. Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So I think that's everything, and we should definitely connect, Kareth, in terms of getting your interns as well as the this other guy. His name is Preston, because he's running against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco. He has over 30 volunteers working with him, and at least 4 or 5 people who work on like websites and data entry and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So he has some volunteers as well. So I believe between the 3 or 4 of us, we should be able to get these contact lists updated, at least hopefully in the next month, to be able to talk to all the candidates and all of the groups that need to be involved in this discussion.
Okay, will you reach out to me offline, send me an email with, or do you just want me to repopulate this list? Because I can work off this list and just edit it.
Yeah, that's the list. It's completely editable by anyone publicly. It saves every single rendition and every edit that's made because it's a Google document. And it, you know, it has a column for email, phone number. You know, those are the columns that are the most ideal. The email is the most important because it allows us to do mass emailing of everybody simultaneously. Our database of the Bernie movement organizers on the grassroots level, we have over 300 nationally. And so that is a database that's accessible to you guys as well. So all of us would be able to email, you know, potentially thousands of people for communication purposes. These are all basically public emails of public organizers and public candidates. You know, so we want public the public information, and if they do have an email that's private that they don't want to be publicly accessible, then we can put it on a separate list that's only manager's list or whatever. But you know, every candidate, you know, should have a public email address. You'd think, right? Yeah, so I'll put on the task list here, specifically that I'll email Kirith and Preston and other volunteers for the databases. So I'll get that out in the next 24 hours or so. Are there other next steps or tasks that we could go over? What I had here for the topics was, you know, talking about the candidate groups, which we basically did. We went through them. We basically listed them, but what would be the priorities? Where should we focus on? We already talked a little bit about that. Maybe we should focus on terms using populist and peoples as opposed to some of the other terms that push people away from them. And then from there, candidate support for individual campaigns. There's a lot we could talk about in these calls to actually support individual campaigns and individual people running for office. So that's an important topic for the future. So this is all the next steps. Candidate database and communication, we covered that. And then there's all these other groups. There's also a discussion of third-party run for Sanders that's come up a couple times. And then we did plenty of open discussions. So are there other next steps or tasks that we feel like should get done between now and the next week? And if people feel pretty good about this particular meeting time?
I would like to suggest that we put together, I know the filing deadline in Missouri is next Tuesday, March 29th. Kansas is June 1st. We could somehow disseminate as widely as possible the deadline for candidates to file to run and encourage more Sanders supporters to run. I think that's a critical next step. And like I said, in Missouri, the deadline's on us.
Yeah, and I do have a list that we're putting together, which what I call future candidates. So these are people who are interested in running in the future for future elections, but they're not ready to jump in the ring right now. So, I mean, we need thousands of people to step forward as potential future candidates, and we just need to keep databasing them, even if we can't get them to run by the deadline of next week or the week after or whatever it is.
Well, I can tell you here in Missouri, and this has been my personal greatest source of stress and frustration the last few weeks is I've seen this March 29th deadline roaring towards us, and there are very few Bernie supporters running for office here in Missouri at any level. And I've been reaching out frantically, but frankly with the campaign, I thought maybe after March 15th, after our primary was over, some of them would turn their attention to helping with this. So far, that's not been the case. People either got discouraged after that Tuesday and don't want to do anything, or they're still devoting 100% of their time to calling other states. And meanwhile, our deadline's next Tuesday, and there aren't going to be very many Sanders Democrats on the ballot in Missouri. I'd like to see other states that have deadlines further out. We're right on the Kansas border here in Kansas City. So I'm going to be helping my friends in Kansas try to recruit candidates. But you know, you can't win if you don't run. We got to have candidates running if we want to do this. And I think getting these deadlines out there, I know personally it'd be very useful to me because I'll help in any state that I can, any way that I can to encourage people to run. A lot more fun and a lot less stressful than most people think.
That's the quote of the day. I'm gonna take that with me. Someone thinks it's a lot less stressful and more fun than you think.
I absolutely believe that. I'm living that day by day. I'm a former high school teacher, and right now I've got rooms full of Democrats, last Friday night Republicans and Independents actually listening to me instead of, is this going to be on the test?
Right.
The test is November 8th, and yes, it will be on the test.
Well, I think that's a great suggestion. I know, just trying to get people to run is a heavy lift. So the more information and the more often we talk to people to do that. And if there's still time for them to do it this year, I think that's a great idea.
Well, I'll leave you with this thought that I put out every time I try to put this out every chance I get. Our greatest blessing as citizens of the United States is that we can change our government with ballots instead of bullets. And especially the Trump supporters, I say, if you're angry, but there's no need to get mad or ugly. Just support the candidates you support in a positive way and show up on November 8th and vote for them. We can change our government, with ballots instead of bullets. You don't need to get angry.
Mm-hmm.
We can have a nonstop, nonpartisan political party through the summer and then elect a new government on November 8th and have something to really celebrate.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely. Yeah. So I want to say a few things, and then we can get towards checkouts here. I definitely put recruiting candidates into our agenda. My personal vision, I mean, it's going to be hard to get people to run for office in the short term for whatever reason. I mean, in California, I'm one of two people running for state assembly across the entire state of California who's a Bernie candidate, who's a verified Bernie candidate. There's only two of us. In the entire San Francisco Bay Area, there's only two candidates, one congressional and me, running for as a verified Bernie candidate. So I think there's two things here. One is that we need to make running for office as simple as possible, right? It shouldn't be complicated. There needs to be support networks. That's part of what this group should be. Is someone, a potential candidate can come to this group, and we will help them and hold their hand through the entire process of running for office, their paperwork, all their systems, so they're not doing it alone. And then secondly, the idea of this would be for future elections, but the idea of a parallel governance system where the winner can run with the most number of votes with the least amount of money creates an entire new paradigm where you can run for office and not need to have all this pressure to win. You can still win with getting way less votes than anyone else. And it's like a practice round. People can get practice, learn about what it means to be a representative in this parallel system, and then run again in future years as a huge slate, like what we want to do on like a slate platform across the entire country. So I think getting more people running in a system that is less intense, that you can have fun with it. And also getting regular everyday people. I keep saying this over and over and over again. We need normal everyday people running for office. How else are you going to have a government that's for the people, by the people, of the people, with the people, to the people, if no people are running for office, right? If all you have are basically corporate and big money, secret, pockets being aligned with their ties and their, facades and their fake facades, running for office everywhere, and that is the image of the candidate of today, we're never going to have a people's government. The future needs to be normal everyday people running for office and winning, and it's possible, and it's already happening in Europe. I mean, you see what's going on in Spain and Nordic countries as well as Greece. I mean, like Spain and Podemos. If you haven't researched Podemos, research it. It's basically came out of the Indignata movement, the same thing as Occupy movement, except it was called something else. And they literally are the second largest political party in the nation of Spain, and they have a third of the parliament at this point. So, and these are normal everyday people who dress in normal everyday clothes. They're young, old.
And Jay, if you look on the Populist in Action website, you'll see a phrase I put up there. If we want government of the people to be government for the people, we must have government by the people.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's great.
I love it.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
it's great.
Say it one more time.
Say it one more time. If we want government of the people to be government for the people, we must have government by the people.
Cool. So, do you guys have any last things you want to say before we check out?
Great to meet you both by phone.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that people on the other side of the country are believe in it. And I just thank you.
Great. Yeah, that would be a checkout. So I'll go next. This is Jay. I thought this was a great call. Everything's been recorded, documented, and broadcast, so people can watch this. And we'll keep doing this weekly. So next week we'll have another call at this time. There's also the Wednesday calls, and there are conference calls we're coordinating every single day of the week to support this movement. So, yeah, I'm really excited. I hope to hear and talk with you guys more next week, and we'll just slowly build and keep growing. And as we improve our databases, we will get many, many, many more people involved. So thank you guys so much. I'll turn it over to you, Winston.
Just thank you again for doing this, and it was nice to meet you both. And I think Sean wants to say a couple of things.
Yeah, my name's Sean Wachter. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, here with Winston and Kara. Jay, it was nice to meet you, and appreciate your time. Thanks.
Great. We are done. So,
all right, see you next week.
Cool.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, same time. Same place.
Everybody.
Same place.
All right. Ciao.
All right,
Bye.
ciao. Bye.
See you guys later.